5, 6, 7, 8. Ferms and the sauce. Say what? Ferms and the sauce. Elo. Yo, welcome back, everybody. This is, first of all, our first episode of 2021.
Zoom style.
Wow. Zoom style, yeah. And also, tonight is gonna be a great episode because, if you can see, we have 3 lovely guests via Zoom. Very accomplished,
yes,
talented, knowledgeable,
intelligent, beautiful
women in healthcare. All right. Mm-hmm. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 women in healthcare who's basically gonna help us paint a picture in our minds and maybe even ease some stress or anxiety to our fellow listeners, family, friends, or basically to the masses about the COVID-19 vaccine. So with that being said, we are very excited to introduce to you. Go ahead, babe.
Oh, me first? Okay, yeah. I guess I should start. Well, my name is Cherrie. If you guys don't already know, I guess we'll start with, we're all nurses here. I work on a medical surgical unit, which has been converted to a COVID containment floor since COVID started. And then the past 4 months, since the surge has kind of hit us again, we've been COVID still. So that's a little bit of my background. Maybe we can head on over to Liz.
Liz.
Hi. I introduced myself, yeah?
Yes.
I'm Liz Torkington. I'm also a nurse. Cherrie and I were in the same class. Yeah. And I work in community health. So I'm the street health outreach director for Tiburcio Vasquez in Hayward San Leandro area. And we have 3 street teams that go out into the community and work with people experiencing homelessness, offering healthcare, connecting to the brick and mortar clinics, and just any other services we can provide all over the place.
It's amazing.
Love it. All right. Let's go with Kait.
Hi, I'm Kait. I've been a float pool nurse for 3.5 years now, but before that I was an LVN for a couple years. So I guess in total I've been in nursing for like 5-6 years now, and
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy thinking about that.
I know time flies.
So, yeah.
Awesome. I love the energy already. Last but not least.
Hello, I'm Alyssa. I am a nurse, and I work as I first started off working in like a medical surgical unit, and now I work in inpatient psychiatric. And so I don't really work with like COVID specific, like COVID positive patients, but I do work in like an inpatient unit right now. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's awesome. Everybody is from different specialty, and it's really cool to see you guys come together with us, and talk about this issue that's obviously huge right now. So, yeah.
I want to start with an icebreaker real quickly. Look, it's
he didn't warn me about this one.
I didn't tell her anything about.
He also has questions that he didn't tell me he was going to write down. So. I'm just as clueless.
So I know it's a Friday evening, right? It's like 8:30, almost 9 o'clock. Now, this is for everybody. If COVID didn't exist, what would you be doing on a Friday night? Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
Honestly, I would just be probably
doing
the
same thing.
Like I always do. In fact, I'd be like, I'm really sleepy. And
I know.
Yeah, I'm a homebody.
Yeah, I would probably be the same way as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Ditto.
Absolutely. I think I'd be doing the same thing too. Or maybe going to a friend's house and having, dinner together. Mm-hmm. Even that's kind of hard nowadays. Mm-hmm. Just meeting up. So.
Yeah.
I think I'd still be probably at home playing video games or whatever I do on a Friday night.
So we're all kind of on the same page.
There you go. I love it. Thank you for that icebreaker. Thank you for the answers. let's go ahead and get some questions going, or whatever you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think,
Cherrie.
I guess, to segue into this, I think we'll start with our experience with the vaccine. Like, what vaccine did you get, and how your experience was with the first dose and then the second dose. So I can go first. I actually got vaccinated December 20th, I believe. Yeah. And I got the first dose of the Pfizer on the 20th. And to be honest, really the main side effect that I experienced was a super sore arm. Like, that was just like the next day, my arm was so heavy and stiff. I could barely move, and it was so painful. Like, so much more painful than a flu shot, which I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe my arm is so sore. But I didn't really experience anything else other than a sore arm. But after my second dose, which was about, I think, 19 days after my first one, with Pfizer, they say it's 21 days apart from each other, but you have some leeway, like a couple days before that 21-day mark. But probably like an hour or so after my second shot, I started feeling already sort of some weakness, some muscle pain, and just like overall tired. And then the next day, I was just gone. Like, I knew I was in my body, but I was like, this is such a weird feeling. I was so weak.
I remember.
And like, I wanted to do things, but my body wouldn't let me like do things. Like, even walking down the stairs, my knees were hurting. I'm like, what is wrong with my body?
You lost appetite.
Yeah.
as
And I
well.
didn't eat for a full like 24 hours. It was so strange. And then I woke up the next day and I was fine.
So I guess the question is, what side effects did you experience when you got vaccinated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, so for my first, I had probably a similar experience as Cherrie's. Like, when first of all, I took the Moderna vaccine. So I did not take the Pfizer, I took the Moderna. After my first injection, I had the same experience. I could hardly lift up my arm. It was completely sore, but no other symptoms. And then the second vaccine came immediately, after you take the vaccine dosage, you have to be monitored for the first 15 minutes to see if there's like some type of reaction. And for the first 15 minutes, like, I started feeling like tingliness in my left arm. I started feeling like the
Bless
soreness. Bless you. And like, I started feeling like tingliness in my arm, and but it went away. So I kind of felt that was more so like a somatic symptom for me, like just kind of like the anxieties of like, oh, there's something in my arm that I don't know what it is. And so I think like that tingliness might not have been like a real symptom, but I went to work the next day, and about 24 hours after, almost exactly 24 hours after getting the second dosage, I started getting the fever. I started having the body aches, the shooting pains starting from the legs up, and just a lot of like weakness and fatigue. I just remember going home that day and thinking like, oh my God, how did I even get through a day of work? Doing that?
I can't believe you worked. A lot of people called out the day after, their second dose, because it was just that bad. So props to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Liz?
Thank you.
Yeah. I also took the Moderna. So the first dose, same as Cherrie, like, it was just like, felt like what I've experienced a flu shot to be. So kind of soreness in the arm. Although the next day I definitely was like, oh, this is really sore. But I also had done an arm workout like that previous night. So it was kind of hard to tell. But I definitely, that side, I could barely lift it above my shoulder. So that was more intense than I was used to. And then by the next day, it was fine. I mean, it might have been a little sore, but it was fine. And then, my second dose also was, I got it in the morning. About 12 hours later, I would say, I started noticing symptoms. I remember it was a really cold day, and I thought I was just cold. And I was like sitting in front of my heater vent, but I was like shaking. I'm like, I think these are chills. And then, that evening as I went to bed, I just didn't feel great, fatigued, kind of queasy, kind of a dull headache. In the morning, I also had I didn't even have a fever, but it was a higher temperature than I usually have. And I take my temperature every morning. So, and then it continued throughout that day. I did go to work just because I wanted to get some stuff done. And I'm not working on the floor, so I have a little more flexibility there. But the whole day I just felt like I was coming down with the flu and, tired and those symptoms. And the queasiness was definitely there. And then by the evening, that second day, I think I started feeling pretty much back to normal. And the next day I was fine.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Kait.
All right. So little disclaimer, I actually just recovered from COVID in December. My entire family got COVID. My mom's a nurse and she actually got it from a patient who wasn't tested till a little bit later and then turned out to be positive. So at that time, I believe the vaccine was released early December, right? And there was nothing, like I was Googling everything, like when to take the vaccine after you've recovered from COVID. And there was nothing until early January when Fauci released like, oh, you should wait about 3 months. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No one knew that. So I got it as soon as I was available to get it, once my hospital got it. So I got it December 28th and I got Pfizer. And that day, I think I got it midday. So it was around 4 or 5 p.m. And everything was normal. It was fine. And I thought, whatever, this is going to be like any other vaccine.
Sorry, the train.
That's okay. But the following morning, I woke up around 5 a.m. from pain. And I have never felt that much pain that I actually woke up from it. I woke up moaning. Like that's how painful my arm was. My arm was just, felt heavy, like I couldn't lift it. I felt chills. I felt body aches. I felt like I had a fever, but I was just way too weak and in too much pain to even do anything about it. So I just slept it off for a couple more hours and then got up and I had a fever, pretty bad one. It was like 102, 103.
Wow.
No appetite, but I ate a little bit and the rest of the day was I was just bedridden all day. And I was just like, this is probably a normal reaction, especially since I had the COVID antibodies in me. Maybe they were just fighting extra hard to get everything out. But I think it wasn't until around dinner time, I told myself like, I should just take some ibuprofen or something. So I took it and immediately, I want to say 30 minutes to 45 minutes after, I felt fine. Like nothing even happened. Like I didn't experience a whole day of having a fever and body chills and aches and everything. Wow. So I felt a little silly that I didn't take it earlier,
but we're all like that, aren't we?
Yeah.
We wait or sometimes don't even take anything.
I'm gonna fight this.
Exactly.
Wow.
But after that, I was completely fine. I didn't come back or anything. And the next days I was back to normal. So that was good. The second dose, I actually planned it out because that specific week I only had 1 day off in between the days that they were offering the second dose of the vaccine. So I knew I could have called out of work if I wanted to, but I really didn't want to. Yeah. So I ended up going at 6 a.m. before my work day and got the second dose. And I had ibuprofen on deck just to take it if something started happening during work. And surprisingly, I didn't feel anything until 12 hours later, around 6 p.m., right near the end of, or right about change of shift. So I started feeling the body aches coming, and I was just like, I need to just give reports and get out of here and get home. So after that, once I got home, I don't know if it was just the adrenaline from being at work that was just fighting the symptoms that were coming, but right when I got home, I felt the same exact weakness. And I really didn't think it was going to hit me as hard the second time around.
Yeah.
But it did. And I started shaking, just getting the chills. I could feel I probably had a fever, but I didn't check my temperature. I was just like, I need to just go to sleep. Took some ibuprofen after eating some food, and surprisingly, I woke up the next day and I was fine.
Wow.
So I don't know if I just slept through all the symptoms, but that was actually really surprising.
Yeah. Wow. That's like, I mean, you know, do you feel like since you got COVID and then, you know, you experienced your symptoms, were you symptomatic when you got COVID?
I was I had a cough for a long time, but that's kind of typical of me. I kind of get bronchitis often, like once a year, but I didn't. Sorry, I'm about to go into a mini story time.
It's okay.
My mom was the one who got COVID first. So she was self-isolating in her room for 2 weeks, like we're told to. So after the 2 weeks, she was still symptomatic with a fever and body aches and everything. But since all I knew was you just need to isolate for 2 weeks and the virus is no longer contagious,
Right.
she was able to go around the house and everything. And she still wore a mask and whatnot. But my brother and I, that's when we started feeling actual COVID symptoms besides me just feeling a cough. And he and I got a fever, really, really bad fever for a few days. And I got body aches and chills, and I lost my sense of taste and smell for only a few days. But, which I thought was strange because my mom isolated for 14, 15 days. I learned when I came back to work that if you have COVID and you are still symptomatic, the 2-week rule no longer applies. You're actually, and I didn't know that before. So if you still have any sort of the bad symptoms, like fever, body aches, chills, you're still symptomatic and you still need to isolate. And I don't think that's what's being spread out to the public. It's just like, isolate a week, 10 to 14 days, and you're good.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah. So do you feel like your symptoms when you had COVID was worse than when you got the symptoms from the vaccine, or are they about, equivalent or not the same at all?
I think the vaccine was worse in the sense that it was kind of like packed in all together. When I had the symptoms from having COVID, I actually felt like I had a fever, but I was still able to do anything. Like I didn't have lack of energy or anything like that. I felt like with the vaccine, it just kind of all hit me like a punch. Yeah. But surprisingly, like it was surprising how bad I would feel during those hours after the vaccine. But then after I would wake up or just a few hours after taking ibuprofen, I felt back to normal. So that was interesting.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really, I know that's personal and that's something that can sometimes be like, a lot of the times traumatic for people to, experience that and then have to talk about that. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Of course, I'm glad to.
Yeah.
So a considerable amount of the general public think that the vaccine was released too soon, or there's not enough research. I don't trust it. I'm going to wait a couple more months. Was there, and it's for everybody, right? Was there any hesitation about getting the vaccine when you first heard about it?
I didn't have any hesitation.
No hesitation.
I was pretty clear. Like I sort of trust my body to handle things, and I had done some reading and I understood that yes, it was fast, but also they did the clinical trials, all the phases kind of simultaneously. So that's why it went faster. And then it was technology that had been like this mRNA technology had been worked on for think a decade at least. So it wasn't like it was, they knew what they were doing. And I guess I'm optimistic and trusting. So, and I just went for it. I didn't have any hesitation.
Okay.
That's awesome. I know, Liz, you've always been that way. I really admire that about you. But I definitely had my like reservations because, of course, all year, like you hear about this virus and then you're like, well, I don't know what source is right, who should I trust, who should I listen to? CDC tells us to wear this for nurses. Like, there was so much happening in that year, last year, that when the vaccines came out, I'm like, okay, how much, like I really had to sit down and do my homework and like read the published articles, read the peer review journals, really understand how this technology is and is it rush, and coming to realize that the amount of money and the time that they took to develop the vaccine and the trials, the people, the studies, like it all at the end of the day, like I had to just read the data for me to really understand like this. It would be so foolish of me to not kind of take this opportunity. It's like we're being handed this, and if there wasn't any data, of course, I wouldn't go through with it, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any hesitations in the beginning. I think for me, even to this day, my biggest and only concern probably is just what are the long-term effects, right? Because we still don't know, and only time will tell what the long-term effects are, but the benefits outweigh the risks for me, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say something more?
Yeah.
I remember I was talking to two other nurses in my field, and one of them said like, "How are you feeling about the vaccines?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna do." I had my same reaction, and they were kind of like, "Oh, we're feeling hesitant," and so that was when I first realized that I was maybe an anomaly. But then one of them mentioned talking to like their medical supervisor, MD, who just about their concerns. And he was saying, and I read this somewhere else, that vaccine producers, once 3 million people are vaccinated and they have kind of the data from that amount of people, they kind of breathe a sigh of relief. So so now we're way beyond that. So just to give people some of that background to maybe feel better about it. And then the other thing is that I remember reading, usually adverse effects that are, happen right away, like within those first 15 minutes. And if not like a few days from then, but like, so if we're months into it and haven't had a reaction, then the long-term effects are probably fine.
Minuscule. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyone else?
I definitely had fears about receiving the vaccine, just because it was just made so fast. It was like mRNA has never been done before, all these things like that were spreading. And then of course, when you see social media, right, like you just see all these like different opinions from different people, there was just so much uncertainty about the vaccine. And I think what made me change my decision was the fact that, I believe like nursing is a profession of believing in research and believing in the science and in the studies. And I feel like if I was to make a decision based off of simply other people's opinions, simply things that you see that just like some influencer says, that's not where we should be getting our information from. It should be in the science, trusting the science, trusting the data that is there, that is truth, right? And so I think that after doing my research, and I was able to make an informed decision to choose the vaccine. To take the vaccine, because the information is out there for everyone. It is out there. It's a simple Google search sometimes. But I think like a lot of times it comes to which articles are the correct things to read. What is the trusted sources that you can put your faith into? And so yeah. I think that's where like a lot of people's fears come from, is like, who do I trust?
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. I also had my reservations into taking the vaccine. In fact, I kind of looked at it as like getting a new iPhone model, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'll wait for a couple people to try the iPhone.
That's a good
12
analogy.
Yeah, good analogy.
and see how they like it, if there's actually a difference, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I, of course, was kind of sucked into all the social media out there that were talking about, oh, this can happen or this might happen. Long-term effects can happen. But in the end, like you guys said, there's just so much information out there, accurate information. And despite us kind of still being a little bit like the guinea pigs for how long the vaccine will last, in the end, at least, you know, we are protected.
Right.
And that's really, that does give like a sense of peace, especially for the fact that it's now slowly getting out there to the general public besides healthcare workers. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that insight. Now, I know you had some questions that you want to pull out real quickly from
people on Instagram when I asked them, you know, if they had any questions about the vaccine. We'll just do a few of these. This one's kind of to lighten the mood a little bit. What size needle do they use to administer the COVID vaccine? I mean, I was like, I don't know. I didn't really look at the needle, but I would imagine any, you know, whatever needle they use for any intramuscular vaccine or injection, which is mostly 22, 23 gauge.
I got a 23. I know that.
Oh, you saw it?
So
I definitely saw it.
So for people who aren't in healthcare, what is a 23 or 22 gauge? How would you describe that?
How would I describe that?
Just so, or for anybody, you know, it's just
I don't know if I'm not good.
Medium size.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to lie. I mean, it has to be long enough to go deep into your muscle. So it's not like a teeny tiny needle. Okay. But the amount. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's 1 inch long.
1 inch long, right?
Okay.
And if that helps people visualize, that's not very long. 1 inch, right?
Yeah, not too long. But it's not. And then 1 inch long, and then
22, 23
yeah,
is
20.
smaller than
18.
And then I know that's really hard to
I know it's hard.
when you're not
That's okay.
Probably the same size needle when you get a flu shot because it goes in the same place.
In the same area.
That's
so
okay.
Flu shot, that's probably what you can expect.
All right, awesome.
And then and then I was gonna say the amount, at least for the Pfizer, I was actually surprised. There's not much in the vial like that they put into your arm. I think for the Pfizer it was like under 0.5 mils. And then I know the Moderna, is it a mil?
I thought it
was
I want to
0.5.
say 0.5.
Oh,
but
for
I
I think it's also 0.5.
Okay. I think they either said for the Pfizer is 0.3 or 0.5, but it's a very small amount. So I was like, wow, I didn't, because I think with the flu shot, I almost always feel it when it goes in my arm. But for the COVID, I was like, I didn't feel anything at all.
Yeah.
Small amount.
It's very quick. Yeah.
Yeah, very quick.
But surprising how much it affects your arm later.
I know. That's why I was like, oh, it's nothing. And that arm soreness is just like, wow. But I would do it again and again. Okay, what else? Okay, so this one. Building immunity between each dose and when you're completely vaccinated.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, from what I remember, at least, and they're very similar, Pfizer and Moderna, but from what I remember, like a week or two after the first dose, you kind of have like 50% protection. And then a week or two, for Moderna, I'm saying 2 weeks, and for Pfizer, you can probably say 7 days. Then you have like 95-ish%.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's about the same. I wanted to add to that, actually, because, there are some people that are saying that, what's the point of getting the vaccine if, you can still get COVID anyway, or like, why should I still follow social distancing or wear a mask after I've gotten the vaccine? And I actually, the past week, to 2 weeks ago, I had a patient who got who got the first dose of the vaccine, and this person, she lives by herself, and I think either before she got the vaccine or a couple days after, she had visited some family members and she got COVID, and so that is a prime example of how you are not, sort of invincible to COVID once you get your first dose or the vaccine in general. There's still not enough, unfortunately, data to prove if you are still, transmitting the disease once you get the vaccine, or if you're still able to get sick from somebody else. Because from that first dose, you're only protected 49-50%. So that's why we still have to be vigilant in social distancing and masking and all these things, even after getting the vaccine.
Yeah, and like you said, we don't have the data yet about transmission. So even if we're 95% protected, we could still get maybe mild symptoms or ABA symptomatic, and then be okay ourselves, but pass it to other people.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the whole point of we don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yep. I think those are my questions. I mean, what are your questions? I don't even know what your questions are.
Oh, no. Those are the questions from your...
Yeah. Those are good.
That's
done
it?
with those.
Are you done with those?
Because we kind of covered the other ones.
Do you three have any questions or anything you just, free form, anything you guys, you ladies want to talk about?
I always have things to talk about.
This is true.
I'm trying to not
What's on your mind? Speak to us.
I don't know. I didn't think of anything. What is on my mind? Yeah.
Is there a sense of relief now that you're vaccinated? All four of you. Relief.
Absolutely.
100%.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm waiting for this coming Tuesday is my 2-week mark, and then I'm just gonna cough all over everyone and lick everyone. Yeah, just kidding.
You should test it out. Do your own research.
Right. Yeah. Don't follow. Yeah. Nice. But no.
Trials.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice because I'm sure we all obviously have people at home, and we're going out and working and coming home, and that's my main thing. I'm not as worried about myself, which is probably a coping self-defense situation, but or defense mechanism, but I don't want to get my husband sick. I don't want to get
Right.
So knowing that I'm more protected and most likely, hopefully, I won't be passing it, it's good.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. I think, especially because I work so closely with COVID patients at work, it's just an added layer of protection for me and just security, knowing that, if by chance, God forbid, I do get sick, at some point, that I have gotten the vaccine, and hopefully that my symptoms will be mild. But, I don't think that's going to happen. Fingers crossed. But yeah, it's definitely a big relief for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a
will
question.
say it's given. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like it's given my coworkers and I just a sense of confidence
Nice.
when it comes to going to work. I feel like back in the day before COVID, all kind of isolated patients, contact precautions, airborne, any of the isolation patients, which is for just any of these contagious diseases for those who aren't in healthcare. We would always just kind of freak out and be like, oh, great. I have someone with MRSA today.
Yeah. Or C. diff.
Yeah. MDRO of the urine. Oh, great. But now I feel like COVID has just succeeded over all those fears. Yeah. And it's just kind of oh, dang, we have to take care of a COVID patient today. Gotta be careful. But ever since getting the vaccine, my coworkers and I have just been more confident in it. We feel more safe, and we're just oh, it's okay. Now we can truly treat this patient, give them everything we got.
Right.
Which I'm not saying that we didn't before, but there was always just this fear, oh no, am I going to get this over me and bring it home, spread it around to others, which again, we don't know the research out there if that's still something that can happen regardless if you have the vaccine or not.
Right.
But I don't know. You can't help it. You can't help but feel safe and protected when you get the vaccine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that just gives you all the power.
Yeah.
when
that's
being a nurse.
The truth. Yeah. I was going to ask Alyssa because Alyssa has a child. You are mama. And, obviously they haven't done any research or talked about vaccines with kids yet. But how do you feel about that as it stands right now?
Like as in like, how do I feel about my child receiving the vaccine?
Yeah, like if they were like, if they were to tell you like, your kid, any child can get the vaccine starting tomorrow, for example.
Oh, yeah. I'd say just specifically because my child has a lot of allergies. He actually grew up with he has had reactions to vaccines before. He probably, a lot of research right now just for the adult version of COVID vaccine is suggesting that people who do have allergies to consult your pediatrician, your physician about before taking the vaccine. So I would definitely consult his pediatrician prior to just walking him over to Walgreens before. But I do have confidence, that if they were to say, hey, it is okay for children to now take the vaccine, that I would let him take that if after consulting with his pediatrician, just because of he has so many allergies to so many things right now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. he has had reactions to like MMR vaccines and already. So.
Yeah. And that's another thing is, if you are someone who has like a lot of allergies or who have had severe reactions to medications or vaccines in general, that's definitely a good point you bring up, is to really consult your doctor about that, because they've shown in studies that you're more likely to have more severe reactions or certain reactions when you do get the COVID vaccine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hearing everyone's side effects, and as well as talking about children, I want to kind of segue into, I guess, the next tier, right? Because tier 1A, I think that's what they call it. Tier 1A is you folks, healthcare providers. I think that's done, and I think we're transitioning to the next batch or the next group, next tier, whatever. That being said, do you have any tips or tricks or suggestions or tips or tricks to the next tier? Maybe taking ibuprofen, right, or something beforehand. I hear people, drink water before.
Actually, sorry to cut in.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say that I took ibuprofen before my second dose because I had work and I knew my reaction to the first dose. And I didn't want to risk feeling those side effects at work and having to go home from it. That being said, I took ibuprofen before I got the vaccine. Shortly after, I actually Googled an article that said, do not take ibuprofen or Tylenol before you get the vaccine.
Okay.
Don't do it because it can weaken your immune response. And the whole point of the vaccine is to have your body fight the infection.
Right.
I mean, they're not giving you COVID, but they want your body to produce all these antibodies to fight what the vaccine is giving you. Despite all that, I don't know if that really affected me. I did still feel side effects after the second dose, but learn from my mistakes.
So no really tips, and it's just get in there, huh? Get in there, get your arm in there, just do it. Like, no, okay.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
Don't hold your breath.
Breathe. Have the next workday off.
There you go. Okay.
All and they do say it's okay to take ibuprofen after when you start feeling side effects.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier that I actually also did develop a fever after the second dose, and I didn't take Tylenol until I decided to take my temperature, and I was like, okay, I guess I should start taking something now. And then, like immediately after like 30 minutes to an hour, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Good old Tylenol.
I remember. Then you had your appetite. Yeah, I remember
and then
that.
I
Yeah.
ate,
Yeah.
and then I slept well. But yeah, I mean, there's no really big trick. Just get in there, go and breathe, and just, try to stay calm. I know it's a little like it's a mix of emotions. Like I remember walking in there like, wow, this is like history and scary and exciting. It was just a lot to take in. But it's once it sinks in and you've gotten the vaccine, like you've completed it, you're just like, wow, I did that. And
you did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you all think about which arm to do? Like I always would do my non-dominant arm, but then for the second dose, I did my dominant just because I use it more. And someone had said this, like another nurse, why try your dominant arm because you'll actually use it and get the blood flow and it'll heal, it'll feel better. What did you all do, or what do you think?
I always learned from when I was little to use your dominant arm because you move it more and you're able to stretch it more, and that in turn will make your arm less sore for any vaccine. So that's what I did on my first dose. But then that's when I also woke up with the most pain that I've ever had in my life, that it scared me for my second dose that I did my non-dominant.
Because I did the opposite.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. After my first dose, I was like, I should probably do my dominant arm because I use it more and probably not be that sort. And by the way, the second dose for me, my arm was fine. Like that was the number one thing. I was like, please, anything but a sore arm, anything but that. And it was completely fine. I was so shocked. But yeah, I would agree. I think do your dominant so that you can move it more. Actually, Gerald's parents, like, they went to work right after they got the vaccine, and they work like 12-hour shifts, and they're CNAs, and they were fine. Like no side effects, no sore arm. Like, dang, like, dominant arm and everything. So yeah, I would have to agree with that. Yeah. I was going to say something. No, I lost my train of thought.
But you, Alyssa, left arm, right arm?
Left arm, non-dominant arm.
Dominant arm. Okay.
It's hard when you have a baby because you're like, you want to carry him and do things.
Yes.
That's hard.
It was so hard. But I guess like just carrying him was me exercising.
That's true.
Like, all right, let's get rid of this soreness.
What else? I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh no.
Does anyone have any other thoughts? Anything else you want to say?
I'm going to make this a ladies' open forum now. Okay. I'm going to make it healthcare. The nurses talk, and you four just do what you need to do. Maybe some advice to the masses or anything that you can come up with. But I want to thank you three, all right, for taking time for this Friday evening and making this podcast. But I'm gonna sign out, and it's just gonna be I'm just gonna be right there. I mean, I can't go anywhere. You know what I mean? So but thank you, and you're in charge.
Oh, okay.
You're in charge.
He has all this like fancy equipment. I don't know how to work any of this stuff.
Oh dear.
Okay, I know I told you guys 30 minutes. So if you guys have any last thoughts or anything else you want to talk about, I'm here. I have nothing else to do, so talk to me.
I'm thinking.
Liz is always a brewing. Mine is always brewing.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I always like to go back to like, it's not just a decision for yourself, whether you're going to get the vaccine. It affects everyone around you. And especially as we're trying to get to a certain percentage of vaccinated people so that we can go back to whatever normal will look like. And yeah, like we always say with the flu shot, it's really about protecting vulnerable people who can't actually get the shot. Like, like Alyssa's child maybe won't get maybe let's say they don't get the shot, then if enough of us are vaccinated and not, less likely to contract the disease and less likely to transmit it, then we're protecting those people who don't have that protection. Like we're their protection. We're like the buffer,
The herd.
The herd.
The herd.
Herdity.
That's what it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like sometimes people get a little hung up on me, and like, am I going to do it versus
Right.
like mean for everyone else. So.
Yeah. No, I hear that. That's 100%. Have you, Liz, with your work, have you dealt with like COVID and having to provide the resources or education, I'm sure, to the population that you work with?
Yeah. I mean, from the beginning of the pandemic, that's what we were doing was like, hey, y'all,
Yeah.
this is real. There's a virus out there and here's what you can do to protect yourself. And here's what to watch out for. And can I take your temperature?
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went on, we felt kind of protected, even like people living outside, they're not in enclosed spaces as much. And
Right.
they're kind of in their own bubble. Like, it's not like they're interacting with a lot of people, especially as the shelter in place was there. But then it started creeping in and we just recently had a few outbreaks in encampments and, there's like hotels where people can go to isolate if they're having symptoms or they test positive. And we've had some positives and not everyone wanted to go. So we, tell them how to isolate, try to provide them with resources, food and what they need to not kind of interact with other people. And then I just had a patient that I love, that ended up in the hospital. I thought he was going to die. He was in the ICU, he's older. He has comorbidities that would make him more, vulnerable. And then he recently got out and he's in a hotel, like that I had already gotten him into, a longer term hotel. And he had a stroke while he COVID, and now we're working. He has some speech difficulties, but otherwise he's okay, and he has like oxygen as well. But he's on the road to recovery, and I don't know. I guess that's not really what you asked, but just sort of saying like it's affected the population I serve, and I really wish he hadn't gotten it, and it'd been a few months later, and maybe he could have been vaccinated, and
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. That's tough. I mean, I think it's so different, coming from us. It's hard to really articulate, especially like working closely with COVID. Kait, you work with, you take care of COVID patients often, would you say?
There was a time where I was floating solely to our COVID floor in our hospital, and that was a rough time. That was around, I think, June, July, August, when it was really, really big. And that was a crazy stressful time where I was doing more code blues than I ever have my whole nursing career.
Yeah. It's
and it was scary.
Scary. Yeah.
And a lot of people were quitting or leaving the hospital or moving floors because they didn't want to deal with it. And I don't know, even now, even though it's a little bit better, you still see the burnout. And what's surprising to me is, I guess it's hard for me to see it this way because I am a nurse and surrounded by this stuff all the time, but it's so surprising to me to still see people who still don't think it's as real as it is.
Yeah. It's just today, actually, it's crazy. I was at the bank just depositing some money, and the guy in front of me turned around and he just like didn't have a mask on, nothing, and just was like aimlessly walking around. And that was probably the first time I had experienced that, because I feel like people in the Bay Area here like just follow the general rule around masking and everything. And I was kind of taken aback because he was walking and he was getting kind of close to me, and I started freaking out a bit. But it's like, yeah, I think it's still so mind-blowing how there is still a lot of like, it's not real, or just the things that people say about it. I just wish there was some way that we could take what's in here and articulate it somehow, because it's hard to really put it into words that at this point I just don't even bother sometimes, most of the time, just like explaining it or trying to make people understand, because it's exhausting. you know?
It's super exhausting.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people who are non-believers or don't think it's that crazy, who like to really focus on that. I forgot what the percentage came out with a while back, where they said like this little tiny percentage actually died from just COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. They like to throw statistics around like that.
Yeah. It was something small. Like, let's say it was like 2, or let's say it was like 0.9%. They were saying like, oh, only 0.9% of the population actually died from just COVID. And that meant that all these people got so mad, and they're like, we shouldn't have to lock up and wear masks and everything. But what people didn't understand is that that 0.9% that died solely from COVID were the people who didn't have any comorbidities, which makes them either a child or an adult who was previously healthy and had nothing that could affect them and make them vulnerable. And they don't look at it that way. Instead, they look at it as, oh, they actually just died from COVID, and all these other people, that the bigger percentage of people that died had diabetes or hypertension, and that's how they died, from like a heart attack or a stroke or something like that.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like, and this is another reason why like I decided to get the vaccine too, is because like when you think about how the COVID affects every single part of your body, whether or not you get the symptoms or no symptoms at all, you're young, you're old, you just don't know how your body's going to respond to it. And the long-term effects, like I know friends of friends who have gotten COVID who were particularly healthy and have no comorbidities, and then months later have some sort of new cardiac issue or some issue with their lungs. And it's frightening, you know, to see someone so young and then have this long-term lung or heart problem that you're going to have to manage for the rest of your life. It's not right. It's like awful to have to deal with that. And I just think about, I would take a vaccine no matter, you know, every year, however often I have to protect myself, but also those around me, versus getting COVID itself, because just the trauma that it brings to someone's overall health is horrible.
Right. The long haulers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're called. Yeah. That doesn't sound fun.
No. Yeah. Anyway. So I guess we can, I don't know, some final thoughts before we wrap it up. Any last words?
I think this pandemic has really shown how people react to things that are out of their control. People get defensive and believe that this pandemic is not as real as it is, or people, there's like a lot of hostility towards each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we can do during this time is to choose how we react to that, choose how we react to things that we can't control. So what does that mean? That means if I have concerns over the vaccine, over like the uncertainty, then I should choose to do my research and read about it and answer those questions for myself. So yeah, those are my final thoughts on this discussion.
All right.
Yeah. I resonate with a lot of what Alyssa said, and I mean, things have kind of changed over the months, over the year, but I also felt like it's affecting everyone, whether people are upset about the restrictions or scared or whatever, you know, if maybe we don't all agree, but we're all affected by it. And so there is kind of, to me, like a silver lining of feeling more connected, and you can't really ignore this. You can't just kind of pretend it's not happening. So and it is a historical moment. Cherrie, you kind of used that phrase, once in 100 years kind of thing that we're going through. So even though it's really stressful and hard, even if you're not a healthcare worker, I mean, this is just a hard time. I mean, we'll hopefully in a few years be able to start talking about back in those times.
I always think about that. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
Like when we get old, like thinking about like, do you remember? Let's
The 20s?
Don't talk about it.
Right.
Don't talk about it.
When I was not a kid.
25 years old.
Also, can I just say, do you all have this reaction like when I watch a TV show that's not in COVID times and everyone's in the room together?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, ah!
Yeah, all the time. I just think about
Yeah.
how were we able to do a lot of the things that we used to do. And it's kind of like going to concerts. I miss it so much, but just thinking about it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even, I would be so
Right.
nervous. Like, but yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's great points that you guys bring up. We've been doing this together.
Yeah.
Everybody, we're all in the same boat. Everybody's suffering somehow. And one's suffering is not greater than the other. And we have to just be mindful of that and be kind to one another. I mean, obviously we feel some type of way about people who don't believe with COVID and the vaccine. But, I think that they're just as scared, if not more scared than the believers. And we just have to pray and hope, pray if you believe in that and hope that they come to an understanding and that we can get out of this stronger, and we will eventually.
Let's say, and we will get out of this 2-3 years from now, maybe even a year from now. Where are we going? Where are we traveling? Where's our dream destination? Where are we going, ladies? Go. Where are we traveling to?
Oh my.
Where are we traveling?
Japan.
I know. I was just gonna say that. Everywhere. I think all the healthcare workers deserve a year off, a good year off of work.
There you go.
I agree. I don't know. It's just funny because 2020, I kept telling myself and everybody that 2020 was going to be my year to travel and travel hard before I started really saving for a family and life.
Yeah.
And, that obviously didn't happen. So, but I think I'm definitely going to be hitting up like Peru, like Machu Picchu.
Oh. Yeah.
Definitely Korea, Japan. I want to go back to Hawaii. I mean, I know people are going to Hawaii right now, but it's expensive because you have to pay like $130 for a COVID test before you go there.
Yeah, I know. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Liz, where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go to all those places you all mentioned, Europe, Italy, but even just my friend in Oregon, I'd like to fly up and visit,
Right.
So those little
Yeah,
trips.
and little
Right.
moments like our friend Caitlin, who just gave birth to a beautiful
Yeah.
baby who we
I
can't
know.
see.
Right?
Yeah. So the little, I guess the things that really just the little things that we took for granted, or just being able to see family and friends and in the same room, gatherings and things like that.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna end it right now.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be here for 30 minutes, but an hour
I'm
passed.
so sorry.
And
I like it.
it was a great Friday evening. As you can see, this one back here is starting to get a little curious about what this light is. Speaking of light, thank you for sharing your light and insight on your experiences to these 4 lovely, professional, knowledgeable, talented,
Beautiful, intelligent.
women in
Healthcare.
healthcare. So
Isn't there a clap somewhere here? Oh, nope, not that.
wrong button.
Oh, no, not that.
Now she says, "Okay, with that." There you go.
There you go.
All right. So with that being said, once again, thank you for making time out of your evening to be here. And
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
and for educating the world. Let's end it. 5, 6, 7, 8. Firms and the sauce. Say what? Firms and the sauce. ELO. Thank you, everybody. That is episode 8. Vaccine.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo!